Welcome to another very special Turnbuckle Trash Talk interview. I am the officiant, Kent. Joining me is a name you might not have heard in the Florida area as much yet. But if you haven't heard it yet, you will. This is Nolan Edwards from Michigan. He's come down and done a few shows for the ACW Proving Ground, but it's a name I think you're going to hear more often based off of how his first trip went and how this second trip went. Nolan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you want me to grab the mic or no? No. Okay, sweet. Class. I like this. This interview is great already. Yeah, Michigan. Following Cyrestown.
So I'm also a fellow Michigander. I'm from Ann Arbor. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I actually only came down in 2016 and have been on the wrestling scene for a little over a year now. So how would you describe your experience has been in Florida these past two trips?
Well, the first one was a learning experience and rough. So it was at the time when I first came down here at the beginning of 2019, I hadn't wrestled out of the state of Michigan once. I was like 6 going on maybe 7 months in after my first match, so in the business. It was rough. It was never wrestled in front of a crowd like this. And not to mention that ACW is, at the time, one of the most official places I ever wrestled for, and still has been. Compared to the second time, I feel like I was actually myself this time. I could focus more on what I know I do well, and I don't know, just kind of trying to think of the word.
Well, one of the things that's great...
Kind of put myself out there like I wanted to.
Yeah, one of the great things about your work, which I've followed since your first trip down, I've been keeping an eye on you in Michigan, is that it seems like you have a lot of complexity, a lot of layers. Like, it's a character with so much depth that I feel like you never know what you're going to get. You never know who's going to come out, and I find that absolutely incredible and a rare thing.
So everybody knows what my face looks like, obviously, but there's a great period of time where if I show up to a show and I'm like, man, I feel like wearing face paint right now. I've never worn the same face paint twice, and then you never know what gear I'm gonna wear. Like, I've always worn black and silver here, and then my last match here up against Aaron Epic just now, it was like, I almost forgot his name. Against Aaron Epic, he dropped me on my head. I get to say that as an excuse. Against Aaron Epic, like, I was wearing scaly green and blue. Like, when have you ever seen me wear that? You always get a different me, I feel like.
No, and I think that's one of the things that makes you such a draw in my mind, is that you want to come back and see what new layer you're going to get, what new personality or new appearance or what part of you is going to be revealed. You know, it's like you're peeling back the layers each time and you're seeing a different element. And I think that's absolutely fantastic.
It's fun for me. It's fun for me.
Yes.
Just as much as it is for you guys.
So what was the inspiration behind everything? You know, you talk about you're built from outside of Cora's mind.
Yeah.
Your tights will say Cora, they have an eye on them, and you talk about it some. Like, you did a brief promo about it last time, which I wish we'd seen this time. But what was the inspiration and the motivation, and, you know, where did all of this come from?
So I'm very interested in writing. So coming up with, and it's not even coming up with anything, like, it's not coming up with a set character, it's just me being me. I was able to morph my own life into professional wrestling. I'm not going out there and playing a character. You might think I am when I'm wearing face paint and all this stuff. I'm not. I'm just Nolan. Like Cora's a dead ex-girlfriend. And then you just branch off of that, and you can take this so many different ways. You can, like, it's an inspiration, it's a motivation, it's a ways of doing the things I do. It's kind of guided me. So with like a writing background and everything, because I went to before I became a professional wrestler, I went to film school for screenwriting, and I was a screenwriting major, and I could come up with all these things. And when I was in class one day, my screenwriting teacher, Richard Rothrock, told us, write what you know. And at the time, I was trying to write screenplays where I was like, making up this universe or like making up these crazy characters, and it just didn't work for me. It could work for some other people, but it didn't work for me. And so when I graduated, I eventually made it work, but graduated film school, worked for MTV for a bit for the show Catfish as a camera operator and production assistant. And then I realized that I wasn't really doing what I wanted to do. I always lived in my life saying I would never make it past the age of 20. And when I turned 20 and realized I was still alive, I was like, oh crap, I got to figure out what I want to do. And that was professional wrestling. And so I kind of just jumped on it really quick, and I was focusing on professional wrestling and only pro wrestling. So I kind of took what my teacher told me about write what you know. And I just decided after a few matches where I was trying to be somebody else and it wasn't working, I was like, I just got to be what I know. And so I don't go out there and play a character. I don't go out there and try to be anybody else, even though I copy other people. Like if I'm wrestling, like today, Aaron Epic, his entrance looked very similar to mine because I watched him and I just did everything he did. When I wrestled Cyrus, I came out in a Cyrus shirt. I just get creative with it and I have fun. I feel like that's the focus. You gotta like for me, getting into professional wrestling, not thinking I was gonna make it to the age of 20 and starting training after I turned 20, now being 21, still haven't been a year in the business. I just gotta focus on being fun.
Well, from seeing your work in the ring and seeing your work on social media, to only be 21 years old and to only have been in the business less than a year, you do incredible work. You really, really do. And I mean that genuinely from having seen people who've been in this business 10 years, 15 years, 3 years, whatever the case is. It just shows how bright your future is and that you have so much potential to go so far if you're already here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, going back to what you were saying about creative writing, I think there is a certain appeal to wrestling that draws creative-minded people. I had an acting background.
Okay.
I've known other people that have had painting backgrounds that are in wrestling.
I've never painted once until I started pro wrestling.
Well, and your face paint is immaculate, I must say. It does look really...
That's the funny part, yeah.
Yeah, it looks really good. So I think there's some reality in creativity. I think that fantasy comes from a place of reality. So it's interesting to hear you say that your character is like you amplified or you distorted or slightly changed.
It's just me, but sometimes I'll reenact what my opponents do. I feel like we all recall the moment where I tried to hit Sam C with his own finisher, and I ended up not winning the ACW Cruiserweight title because of that. That was my bad, but...
Well, I think that's also another layer to your character, is there's almost like this stalker, copycat style to it, and I think that's just a really cool quality, again, that you don't see.
So there's this, and this is going to sound really funny because you always wonder what kind of music people listen to. I listen to every kind of music. There's this, when I first started wrestling, this is before my first match, there's this Billie Eilish song called Copycat, and it says, I'm trying to remember the lyrics, I might butcher it, but it says, you've got your finger on your trigger, but your trigger finger's mine. And when I heard that, I'm the kind of person movies, scripts, writing, books, everything. If I really care about it, I got to do it twice. I got to read it twice, watch it twice, whatever. So I'll watch it as a fan, read it as a fan, and then go back and dissect it. And I dissected the crap out of that song. And I'm going to be completely honest, lots of inspiration came from that. And I've just ran with it ever since then. But then again, it's just being me. I heard it and I was like, oh, this is me.
Well, and I've seen you incorporate that kind of creativity and that almost that movie-making style into the promos you've put out leading up to the shows. And as soon as I saw that first promo of you writing on the wall and the liar Cyrus Satine and all that,
I was mad.
It was so good, and it hooked me immediately. I immediately became a fan before even seeing you wrestle in the ring.
I had never even been at ACW or outside of Michigan at that point.
And it was absolutely great. So you came down, that was your first trip out of the state to Florida that time?
That was my first time on a plane in general.
So what was that experience like, and how did it affect things when you went back?
I feel like I went back knowing more of what my worth was. If I have to be completely honest, I went back and I approached myself I went down here and I stayed here the first time for 2 weeks. Did the 2 shows, I helped out with FIP, I did Kaiju, and I was watching everybody that's making it right now in the Florida scene. And it allowed me to go back to Michigan with a completely new idea of what this current age of pro wrestling is. And if I didn't go to Florida in the first place, I honestly feel like I would still be in Michigan, maybe Ohio or something, maybe every here and there. I would still be in Michigan, and I would just be doing what I felt worked for me, but I would not have, like, I've only digressed with time because I was doing the same stuff. Like, if I didn't come to Michigan, if I didn't come to Florida the first time and see what was working for everybody and everybody that's like signed to all these companies and seeing what they were doing, it would never have opened my eyes to know what I needed to do.
Well, and I think going out of state brings a whole new element to the experience. You learn so much from just traveling as a wrestler. Like, you could do 1,000 shows in your home state, and that first show out of state will feel completely different, and you'll learn so much.
I was doing like 3-4 show weekends only 6 months in because I was just getting my name out there, and then I finally come down to Florida, and it was like a big break because I was here for 2 weeks, and I worked one show a Wednesday, helped out on 2 shows that weekend, and then a Wednesday again. So it was like a break for me. But at the same time, I was like, oh my God, I'm not ready. It's just so different too. And it was just insane and everything. I don't know. If I didn't come down to Florida and like reapproach what I wanted to do with pro wrestling, I probably wouldn't have come back. Like, I mean, why? How would I be here if I didn't come the first time?
Well, that's true. And honestly, like, Florida is a hot spot. You know, Chicago could be said the same. New York could be said the same. You come down here, there's dozens upon dozens of shows you can work in a month. And so when I say that to people who are out of state, I'm like, you got to come down for like an extended tour because you'll be surprised how much work you can get in a month or in 2 months, you know? And so that's why a lot of wrestlers, I think, flock to this area. So let's go back to the very, very beginning. When did wrestling enter into your life? When did it become, just even as a fan, when did it become something that you were like, oh, this is something I like?
I would say like I was around 5. It had to have been. I remember being at my aunt's house and then like something coming on the TV and it was pro wrestling and them skipping through it and I was interested by it. Maybe didn't stick with it at that point because I was just like, oh, adults got the remote control, can't do anything. But then when I finally like was old enough to see it again in elementary school, I believe like maybe a little bit further down the line, I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch this. So I would always watch it, and it was to the point where it was like every Friday was watching SmackDown, and this is like 2004 on. Every Friday watching SmackDown, every Monday watching Raw. And Monday, since it was school nights, my room was next to my parents, and I had a little box TV, like no bigger than my head, but it had the USA Network. And so I remember I would turn it on, and then like my mom would come in and say it was bedtime and turn it off. And then whenever she walked back in, I'd hear her get in her bed, and I'd turn it back on, quickly mute it, and I'd do my own commentary while watching the rest of Raw. Like, I clearly remember me commentating my way, like a one-man commentator's team, through the entire Umaga versus Jeff Hardy feud for the IC title. That's like one of my earliest memories. There's earlier ones, but like when I think about it, I'm like, oh man, that was cool.
So it seems like Jeff Hardy would be the kind of guy that would really like call to you.
No, not at all. Like when I was younger, growing up, my favorite professional wrestler was Edge.
Okay.
I would say, like, and it's funny because everybody when they see me wrestle, they're like, you don't do what like anything like Edge. And then I was like, I don't know, like watching Edge, and like I got into wrestling because when Edge announced his retirement, I remember the exact minute and second of that day and where I was, and I remember how quick I cried. And I cried because I was like, oh my God, I've never met him before. And then I met him 2 years later, and he signed my Rated R spinner belt, and I was like, because I was so young. It was 2012. I wasn't young, like I was a kid, but I still am a kid.
Still, it's 7 years ago, and you're 21 now, so that would have been like 14, 13. So yeah,
it was devastating to me. Like, I mean, I make my own gear now, and I'm still like, if anybody's gonna say I'm anything close to Edge, it's because my dream set of gear is a mimic of Edge's last set of WrestleMania gear, but with my logos. That's gonna happen one day.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating. Edge was actually one of my favorites, ranging back all the way to WrestleMania 2000 and the TLC matches starting up and everything like that. It was, so I totally feel you there. That's very interesting to me, though, that because when I look at you, I would say that guy like Jeff Hardy because of the face paint and the.
I swear I hated Jeff Hardy growing up. I think there was a girl I had a crush on in middle school that the only thing she knew about pro wrestling was that Randy Orton had tattoos and she liked Jeff Hardy, and so it made me hate Jeff Hardy.
All the girls like Jeff Hardy. I totally get it. So when did you decide, okay, this is what I want to do? I want to actually try this. I want to go train or be on a show or whatever the case is. When did that moment happen?
When I was 16, I have two sisters. They always told me I would outgrow pro wrestling. I'm the youngest, but they always told me I would outgrow pro wrestling, and then I would be like, no, I'm not. And then I did for a year. There was 1 year where I stopped watching wrestling. I think it was 8th grade, and then I picked it back up, and I started watching. And then, like, when I picked it back up, it was like an everyday thing, like it is now as a pro wrestler. Like, I'd say, like, as much as I watch pro wrestling now is as much as I did when I picked it back up after only not watching for like one WrestleMania, which I'm still mad at myself looking back at that. It's kind of pathetic. But I started pro wrestling training when I was 16. I got my license, didn't tell my parents that I was going to pro wrestling training in Flint, Michigan, 50 minutes away, driving a beater car that could barely even start, and then driving up to Flint 3 days a week, and I weighed 90 pounds, and my hair was down to here, and the trainer wouldn't let me do anything for 2 hours besides deadlift and bicep curls and bench and squats. He would, like, force me to work out for 2 hours before he'd let me get in the ring, and even then, he wouldn't even let me do anything besides chaining because they were so scared to do something with me.
Well, 90 pounds, yeah, I could see why. Who was your trainer? Who did you train under?
I originally trained under Aaron Orion, Nick Zero, and this guy whose shirt I'm wearing right now, Ace Evans, all Michigan guys. Then I did follow-up training through House of Truth Martini, and then now I go to Can-Am under Scott Demore. And this is all within the span of 10 months. Well, 2 months before that in my initial training.
Right.
And then, because I went back when I was 20.
So it's been like a year since you started training.
Yes. It's been a year since I started training, like 10 months with shows. So I had those 3 initial trainers, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then one of my trainers, Nick Zero, was actually my first match when my hair was bleached and it was down here and I looked like a little Carino.
Well, that's actually a really good segue into what I was going to ask. What do you remember most about your first match? How did you feel going into it? How do you feel like it went? I mean, most wrestlers say, my first match was terrible. It was the worst match I've ever had. I was nervous. You know, I almost crapped my pants, whatever the case is. What do you remember most about your first match?
That I crapped my pants.
That you actually crapped your pants?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No, I'll explain it. So when you said that, I couldn't help but laugh. But, like, I was doing an arm drag, and I didn't feel good. And I was like, oh, my God. And I'm wearing biker shorts. And I'm like, oh, my God, I don't feel good. And you know the Arabian arm drag? Guy goes a hip toss, you front flip into the ropes, calves hit it, back flip out, arm drag. I did that the second I felt a little squeeze. I didn't full on crap. But there was, like, some leakage. And then I wasn't just wearing biker shorts, so, like, I was fine. And they were black, so, like, I was good. But I clearly, nobody knew now, but I clearly remember going to the back and being like, I didn't know, like, anything about it after that. I rushed to the back and I just, like, checked myself, and I was good.
So,
but for a hot second, I thought I logged in the ring.
So even with that first match experience, you still felt, hey, I want to go do this again.
Oh, I loved my first match. There was 10 people there, 2 of which were my friends that showed up thinking I was reffing that day. And I end up sending them a text like, I'm on 4th, record my match for me. And yelling at them, making sure it's not vertical and stuff, it's horizontal and everything. I loved my first match. And I think, but that was also when I didn't know what I was doing, like what I expressed on earlier. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. Like, I didn't know it worked for me. And then I looked back to when I was in film school and everything. Like I mentioned, I was like, oh, you just got to do what you know. And that's how I became this.
You seem very fond, from what I can tell, of kind of like a reckless, almost like Daredevil-esque style. Since I almost saw you die on video at least once, I'm going to assume that's part of it. Do you enjoy the adrenaline? Do you enjoy just doing what you think other people aren't willing to do? Like, what is it?
It's going to get personal, but I've always been told I will never make it to certain companies because I don't look like a professional wrestler. Even some of my trainers told me, you will never make it to this local Michigan company or this whatever because, and like, no hard feelings, but like, obviously I'm going to take it personal. I was always told I'm never going to make it because I don't look like a professional wrestler. And it hurt, and it took me so long. I was doing matches and everything and whatever, and all the people that made fun of me would tell me, oh my God, Nolan knows his character so well and this and that. And I'm like, it's not a character. Like, I'm just being me, like I expressed on earlier, but they don't know that because they don't take the time to try and understand it. I was always told, You're not going to be a professional wrestler. So that's what made me like want it more. And so it's like being told that almost, well, first of all, I wrestle for said companies that they told me I'd never make it to now.
In their face.
In their face. And I did it quicker than other students and everybody I trained with that they thought, oh, they're for sure going there. But no, my style is completely based off of my first trip from Florida. I was doing a bunch of stuff that I didn't know worked for me and everything. And then I come to Florida and I left and I was like, I'm changing everything. And then I found stuff that worked for me. And it just so happens to be that what worked for me was throwing my body caution to the wind, which is probably why you thought Jeff Hardy. But no, it's like I'm not the biggest professional wrestler there is. Like I'm not even bigger than you. Like,
And I'm just a referee.
and he's just a referee. And so
I am big for a referee. I'm going to say that. They're not a lot my size, but anyway.
we all know he's working out. If you pay attention to him on social media, he's doing good. The Turnbuckle Trash Talk shirt is slimming. But I kind of came back and I was like, my first match back from Florida when I did the initial run with Cyrus and Sam C. I think it was the match with Sam C. I was like, I know what I'm doing. I was picking up steam in Michigan. I was becoming like one of the fan favorites. And this is when everybody hated me at the start. I'm now becoming a fan favorite. I leave for Florida for 2 weeks. People missed me. I come back and I was doing everything under the sun. Found out what works for me. And it's just like, you've seen plenty of videos of me getting like thrown into like walls and like face first and Beals and stuff and this and that. And I literally like, I find it funny. Like even like my match with Aaron Epic, like you saw, like I don't wrestle like everybody else. And I kind of had to realize that when I found out that I am not, like I had to agree. I'm like, okay, maybe my trainer was right. I don't look like a professional wrestler. Did it hurt at the start? Yes. But now that I'm a little bit further down and I'm doing this on my own, that's one thing I credit is I've never once had one person come up to me and say, hey, I think you should do this. It would fit. I've had to figure it out on my own.
Well, and I feel like that stigma of looking like a professional wrestler is fading more and more. Like people would look at people like Darby Allin and say, like, that guy.
I get compared
there's
to Darby
no, yeah, there's no way that he would be a professional wrestler, and he just got signed to AEW.
Yeah.
Like he's in the company of the future, as many are touting it.
Pretty much.
Like, you know, so I think it's very cool that you have that mindset of like you're going to do these things because of the fact that you had that challenge of, well, I don't look like it, so I might as well go beyond. And I feel like that is one of those qualities, like we were talking about, that hooks fans into you really quickly and makes them dig you, is that you're like, this guy's crazy, but he knows what he's doing, and it works for him.
That's the funny part is, like, I was super crazy when I first started off. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not crazy at all right now, but people still look at me like, that's crazy.
Well,
Like, I was coming out and I was like, I had to embrace everything, and I'm talking to myself and all this and that and promos. I'm talking to Cora. Nobody else can see Cora and everything. And I'm doing all this and that. And I haven't touched base on that in months. But every time somebody sees me, they'll post a flyer. They're like, man, I can't wait to see. And this is what I thought was cool. This is how I knew I did it. I can't wait to see what you and Cora do. And I'm like, oh my God.
they've embraced Cora.
I have something here.
So I feel like it's a focus. I feel like you found your lane and your focus. Like you talk, it's like controlled crazy.
Yeah.
I guess is a good way I would put it.
I went out in my last match at ACW, my second run, and I literally did this. I walked out, sat on the entrance ramp and did this and stared at the crowd, and they were cheering for me, and they were booing me the week before, and they're talking to me as I'm leaving, and they're like, oh my God, you're crazy. How is this crazy? It's just me.
Well, and we're in an era right now of the generic wrestler, which is astounding and sad to me, coming from watching the 80s, which I did, if that dates me at all, with big, colorful characters like the Ultimate Warrior, like Macho Man, like, you know, the $1 Million Man. Now it's just, if you can put your name on tights, you can go out there and be a wrestler, and it's so refreshing and nice to see someone like yourself breaking that mold, like Cyrus, you know, like Billy Ray.
Yeah.
Like you guys are doing something where the character is the driving force, not just what I can do in the ring.
Yeah, like it all goes back to that Sam C match where I realized I was like, I gotta figure out what works for me. And then like you also think about that since I've gone to Florida, the first time I went to Florida, I've done 3 months follow-up training with House of Truth. and then I did Can-Am, or I'm doing Can-Am right now. Like, it's not like I just came back and I'm like sitting down and writing on a piece of paper and like watching tapes and watching this person's jumping off of this balcony, I should do this, or this person does this, maybe if I do it the same exact way like every other person is doing that I'm surrounded by, it's easy to stand out. And it's like, I don't know, it just kind of irks me because like people will get things, and I'm always happy for everything that goes for anybody. But at the same time, like, I know for a fact that I'm working hard for what I get, and I don't care if it takes longer, because I'm going to end up getting there knowing what works for me and knowing what I want to do and knowing, like, everything that I am worth. Like, it's like earlier where I was like, I found out what my worth was.
So what does the future for Nolan Edwards hold? What is your end game? What is your goal? End game, get that?
Yeah.
What is your goal in the long run? You know, some people are in this because they're just like, I just enjoy doing it. Some people are like, I want to get to the E. What is your end game?
I just want to do it. Like, I want to wrestle for everybody. I had set goals, like, goals change. So when I was younger, I wanted to work for WWE. Everybody does. Everybody does. Right now, when I first started pro wrestling, I was like, I want to wrestle for everybody. I wanna go out there. I want to do all these cool things, and then like, you're like, okay, you can't always do that. Figure out what works and stuff. Then it turns into, I wanna do this for me. And then I never got selfish with it, but I'd say like there was one point when I first got done with training that I was like, I really want to wrestle in Mexico. I really do. Growing up, I swear I watched CMLL and AAA more than I watched WWE, and I never missed an episode of WWE. Like, that's how crazy I love, like, luchadors and this and that. Like, I wanted to be a mask wrestler, but now this is like
well, I mean, paint's another form of mask. So you would say that the lucha libre style is definitely like your preferred, at least as a fan style.
Oh my God, yeah. And you don't see me doing ranas, but like, I love lucha. And I it's a goal to go to Mexico. And then there was new goals, like if I want to go to Mexico, I might as well want to go to Japan. But now that I think about pro wrestling, like I just want to do it enough to where I actually have money to like just support myself.
That's the goal for all of us, I'm sure. So if you had to give advice to someone looking to get into the business, you're fairly new to it, so you remember the struggles you went through and the journey you went through getting into it.
Just gave me a wet willy.
What advice would you give to someone looking to get into wrestling?
To fail. To like always to like fall flat on your face and do it in front of the people that will remember that you fell flat on your face. Do something stupid in front of somebody that could sign you, but they'll remember you. Like, because I've done that. I can't tell you how many times I've done practice matches in something where somebody's super official, not naming names for anything. The next time they see me, they remember me as the kid that threw a punch like this. And then instead of saying hi or shaking my hand, they just look at me like, oh, and I'm like, I love that. I love that because like they know me, and then the next time they see me, and because it's not gonna stop me. It's not gonna stop me from keep busting down the door and like showing face and being like, hey, I'm here. Give me an opportunity. Like I've failed countless times, and then every time I think about it, I'm like, yeah, but they remember me. Like I didn't fail, like whatever. Like I didn't have an awful practice match. I didn't make a bad impression. I've never made a bad impression on anybody like that.
Well, it's better to stand out than to just be forgotten and shuffled in with everybody else.
Yeah, like I'm so committed to this that I go to the gas station and IHOP and Waffle House in my face paint sometimes after shows, full face paint, and I just wipe my mouth off and I'm like, all right, and I walk in. And I just say, I'm sorry, and I sit down and I eat with all my friends. And then, like, you got to be so dedicated to it that you know you're going to fail, like, that it's not going to affect you.
So if you could change one thing about the wrestling business, whether it's backstage, whether it's in front, whether it's in the ring, anything, if you could change one thing, what would it be?
I honestly feel like I would change just, like, there's so many things I could say. But I feel like if I had to pick one, I would just pick the atmosphere, like a locker room atmosphere specifically. I'm very content on like being everybody here deserves to be here, and not every locker room's like that. And I it's kind of like the fall flat on your face and fail. Like I don't want to go to a fail flat on my face and know I did, and then go to a locker room and like a bunch of people point me out or make fun of me for it. There's a difference between doing that and then This happens to me all the time, and I won't say specific people, but they know who they are, and they know I respect them for it. If I don't do something right in the match, or they'll come up to me and say, hey, I think this would work for you, this or that, whatever, I listen, and then they give me good feedback. But then there's also the people that see me fail, and they're like, oh, that kid sucks. He doesn't deserve to be in a pro wrestling ring. Isn't that? I would change that.
Now's your chance to plug anything you want to plug. Stuff in Detroit, stuff down here, stuff anywhere in Michigan, whatever you'd like to plug. What would you like to tell the people to check out?
I'll I'll throw out my social media. I'm awful at Twitter, but I still do it. SOS underscore or underline, like the little under.
Yeah, underscore.
Underscore? Okay. SOS underscore Nolan Edwards. That's my Twitter. That's my Instagram. That's my Facebook. If you just search Nolan Edwards on Facebook. I always post all my matches on YouTube, whether it's that weekend or like the day of. I always post it on YouTube, so you can always see full matches. I post monthly highlight reels on my Facebook and YouTube. My Instagram game is strong. I'm not going to lie. I'm very proud of my Instagram game. I don't have more than 500 followers, but it's quality content. And so XICW in Detroit, you'll always see me there. That's my home promotion. That's what I consider my home. That's the locker room where I walk up and I'm just like, we're wrestling at a bar tonight, but God, I love the smell of this bar. This bar screams pro wrestling. Like that's you. And if you're in Michigan, I wouldn't miss an XICW show either. Just like if you were in Florida, I wouldn't miss an ACW show. You'll see me pop up at ACW frequently, especially after this trip. Frequently, as much as everything allows me to.
Well, I'm looking forward to the next time you're down here, so we can have a follow up to hear how things have continued to change up in Michigan. And who knows, maybe you'll find yourself a Florida resident one day, because we do absolutely adore you down here. And all the people out there need to know about Nolan Edwards. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.
Next time.